Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. This September, Korea holds the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council, giving Seoul a rare platform to highlight issues of its choice. President Lee Jae Myung will become the first Korean leader to preside over a council session focusing on artificial intelligence and international security while deliberately leaving North Korea off the agenda. On September 23rd, the spotlight shifts to New York. President Lee delivers his debut speech at the UN General Assembly the same day President Donald Trump addresses the gathering, fueling speculation about another possible summit. And with the APEC summit in Gyeongju just weeks later, Korea now faces back-to-back diplomatic challenges. To help us unpack the stakes and implications, we connect to Lee Jae-myung, professor of international studies at Gyeongju National University. A big welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And also joining us is Andrew Millard, assistant professor of international relations at Changwon National University. Good to see you.
Good evening. How are you?
Great. Thank you for joining us. Now, let's start with Professor Lim. So, like I've said, South Korea is serving as the president of the UN Security Council this September. What does this actually mean for Korea's international standing?
I think we are very lucky because this year is such a big year. As we just watched it last week, for example, China, they just celebrated the Victory Day, 80th anniversary of their Victory Day. But China is not the only one, of course, who celebrates the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II or Pacific War in this region. Of course, you know, for South Korea, again, this is the 80th anniversary of the liberation. And at the same time, of course, in the global history, again, the United Nations was established in order to avoid any further war. And it reflected historical lessons from the failure of League of Nations. So this year is a really remarkable year for the UN as well, because they also celebrate the 80th anniversary of the establishment. Of course, UN Day is October. However, September is really big month every year for UN because General Assembly will be held in the third week of the September. And thankfully and very fortunately, South Korea this month, again, we're going to be chairing the Security Council because, you know, every just month, the chair will be changing and then it's in alphabetical order. So this was a big coincidence, very fortunate coincidence. So I think we can just, you know, take a very big this opportunity to reveal how we think about the global peace or many other important agendas, such as, again, the AI, or even climate change or human rights issue. Again, I think the timing is really good for South Korea, and it is very remarkable, I will say. Mm-hmm.
Right, definitely. It's a very good opportunity for Korea to be on the driver's seat at this very critical time. So with this, we'll see President Lee Jae Myung. He will personally preside over the Security Council session, which marks the first for a Korean leader to do so. Professor Millard, how symbolic is this moment?
Well, I think Professor Im kind of hit the nail on the head. This is really perfect timing for Korea. So as Professor Im said, the fact that South Korea is holding the presidency this month and it's the UN General Assembly, it's excellent and really an excellent opportunity for President Lee to be the first president to chair one of the Security Council meetings. Now, this is quite unusual. Most of the meetings, they're chaired just by the ambassadors, and South Korea, it's been part of the UN Security Council a few times now. The first time back in 1996 and 97, then in 2013 and 2014, and now for the third time last year and this year. And it's coming towards the end of its time. So you could also say this is even better just before they're leaving the Security Council, probably for another few years. It's a good way to leave on a very high note. Now, in terms of the significance, as Professor Im also mentioned, they can set the agenda. The presidency, they set the agenda. It's going to be AI. international security issues, overcoming democratic challenges, and so on. But really, for the president to be there, this is adding extra weight. This is saying, South Korea, we're not just interested in these issues, we want to be a global leader in these issues. We don't just want to participate, we want to be leading. And it's also significant because in these official meetings, everything's highly prepared, highly planned, where President Lee can really start to make some personal connections with the other leaders, but with the ambassadors as well, these high-level officials. It's during the break times, before the meeting, after the meeting, during the informal off-camera times. So this is really an extra opportunity for him to make those connections with global high-level officials.
Right. So the symbolism of this sitting president chairing the meeting is certainly very noteworthy and would be a very good opportunity. Now, specifically, like we've said, Korea chose artificial intelligence and international security as the theme for the opening debate. So, Professor Lim, how significant is it for Korea to actually push with this agenda on the world stage?
I think we have lots of opportunity and capability, and at the same time responsibility too. AI is, of course, kind of, overarching theme for our contemporary time. And of course, it can complement the shortage of working labor for the country like, again, the Korea, because we already experiencing the shortage of the, especially the skilled labor, or in some specific industries, such as, again, the agriculture or manufacturing industry, we really are struggling with the shortage of labor. But thanks to the AI-like technology, automation, robotization can be, can move on further. The thing is, AI technology per se is absolutely is a positive thing for mankind, for human. The thing is, again, the regulation issue and the ethics issue. This is another very philosophical and fundamental challenge, I think, for the human beings. Of course, technologically speaking, for example, China-like country also is really, really advanced. So China, US-China strategic rivalry, it is not only about AI, but AI is also one of the hottest, arena where the two superpowers are really competing. But not only just technologically, how can we, again, the better use, again, the AI for the sake of human beings? What kind of regulations should be made on? Of course, those kind of, discussion should be made. And I think I expect, we can see those kind of very active discussions in the Security Council. And South Korea, in that sense, I think in a very good position. Of course, we have many advanced, technologies, but at the same time, South Korea has been always trying to be a good member of the international or global society, and we have tried to comply with the existing rule for the sake of of course, our own country, but not only for the South Korea itself, but also for the globe or the mankind in more general. And South Korea is not a superpower. We can be categorized as, I think, a middle power, or some will disagree with the categorization. But I would say, just for our convenience, South Korea is a middle power, and as a middle power, again, we can show our good behavior, and at the same time we are not threatening to, we are not that much scary to anybody else. I mean, in the room, again, in the United Nations Security Council or in UN General Assembly in general. So that sense, I again expect a lot from this opportunity. Again, I hope, as Professor Millard pointed out, I hope we can really lead the discussion. Again, we can just contribute to to the selecting a right direction for the global society.
Right, let's certainly hope so. But as for the topic, surprisingly, Seoul has not decided to schedule any meetings on North Korea this time around. Professor Millard, why do you think the government is kind of avoiding this issue, and what kind of message could this send?
So you're right, North Korea is not on the agenda. So when they published the agenda, a lot of people were quite surprised that North Korea isn't on the agenda, especially because back in 2023, just a couple of years ago, South Korea did hold a meeting regarding human rights issues in North Korea. So it's surprising that it's not on there. However, you could argue it's actually quite a good choice from South Korea not to have North Korea on the agenda, because North Korea you would expect to be on the agenda. This has been traditionally one of the main topics for South Korean foreign policy. And maybe the South Korean government this time is trying not to pigeonhole itself so that everyone doesn't, of course, they'll be talking about North Korea. Because for South Korea, let's face it, not too much has really changed in the relationship with North Korea. North Korea's position has changed, and I'll talk about that in a second, but for South Korea, not so much. So the South Korean administration, this time they're saying, let's leave North Korea to the side. It's still a very important issue. If North Korea makes any sort of provocation, of course, we'll put it straight on the agenda. But for now, we're going to focus on the issues that are important to South Korea, where, again, South Korea can take more of a leadership role, have more of an impact globally. So I think that's one of the reasons they didn't put it on. But also, like I just mentioned, North Korea's position has changed. North Korea has aligned itself much more closely with Russia and with China. And we saw last week in the military parade in Beijing that Kim Jong-un was right at the very front. Kim Jong-un is quite emboldened now. And so I think it's the right choice for South Korea's administration just to take a little step back, not to rush into any meetings just for the sake of having a meeting just because it's the UN General Assembly. They need to take a step back, look at the whole picture, understand the relations, not just between North and South Korea, but between South Korea and China, South Korea and Russia, South Korea, US, Japan, China. All of these relations together create this wider picture. So I do think it's the right choice that it's not on the agenda.
Right, so it could be a smart move given the changes that we've been seeing lately and the sensitivity of the issue. Then, Professor Millard, let's also touch upon this UN General Assembly. We are aware that President Lee will deliver his first address on September 23rd. Then what kind of a global message is he hoping to deliver?
So I think one of the key messages that I've heard he's going to discuss is the way to overcome challenges to democracy. And I think this is really a very key issue that South Korea has a lot of experience in, has a lot of credibility in. Not just the fact that South Korea from sort of the 1980s itself has democratized in general, but of course we had 2016, 2017, Park Geun-hye was impeached, and then just very recently, in the past year, President Yoon attempted martial law, was then impeached, the whole process. But this was a very calm process, a very peaceful process. Just the same as back in 2016, it was generally peaceful. And the Koreans have always managed to maintain quite a stable economy and a stable political position despite these challenges. So I'm sure this time he's going to get a lot of questions about how has the Korean system, how have the institutions managed to maintain this sort of stable period? And I think also, if we link this with AI, he may get a lot of questions about how South Korea has been able to cope with AI, with fake news, and all of these other issues that in Europe they've had a lot of issues with, and America has had a lot of issues with. And so this is really a very key time for democratic changes. In America, we see Donald Trump really testing the American democratic institutions. And in Europe, over the past few years, several different changes to do with nationalism and xenophobia and anti-Semitism. So I think there'll be a lot of interest in these issues.
Right. So definitely all eyes will be on President Lee's message, what he wants to send internationally. But on the sidelines of this General Assembly, there's growing speculation that President Lee and President Trump could also meet again in just a month, hold a second summit, probably. Professor Lim, what do you think are the chances? And if this actually materializes, what kind of agenda do you expect?
Well, I can't again tell you exactly whether or not they can meet up. I'm in the middle of New York City, but the chances can be pretty high because again, physically both the leaders will be in the New York City and in the UN headquarters building, and if so, I mean, by some chances, both government can arrange, even though it might be a very short and brief meeting, but still, who knows, it can be arranged. The thing is, not only just meeting and greeting itself, more probably important thing, or more important thing. Now, South Korean people are very much more interested in it. Is again after kind of follow up of the latest the summit between the two leaders. Of course, the mood atmosphere was pretty good. Again, when the President Lee visited the White House, again, the few hours before his visit to the White House, we saw a pretty surprising, again, the posting, which was made by the President Donald Trump himself. And then Korean society was pretty much surprised and shocked by, that posting. But thankfully, again, the meeting per se, meeting itself between the two leaders became pretty smooth, went pretty smoothly, and the atmosphere was pretty good. The thing is, again, the details, again, the follow-ups, again, how much exactly the investment should be made for one industry, or like, again, the Korean people who are now detained in the Georgia, what kind of the policy should be made, again, to avoid any further this kind of, again, the situations. Those kind of, we have lots of important and controversial issues on the table. So I don't think, again, all the things can be just, solved with the one magical meeting. But if they can, again, make a chance, again, to greet each other in the New York City, I think that would be wonderful. But we'll see, because it'll be hectic. It'll be very hectic. The UN, that General Assembly wig is super crowded, and every leader from all around the world will be just greeting to each other. So it'll be very, very, very hectic. So well, let's see
Right.
what's going on.
So we'll have to see how it goes. Meanwhile, we hear that North Korea is reportedly preparing to send a higher-ranking official to the assembly for the first time in years. What do you think Pyongyang's intention behind this is?
Well, I think Professor Millard already answered to that question. I can't agree more with his observation. Again, that North Korea, their position in the international society changed dramatically. Of course, nuclear weaponization, nuclear weapon program is one big thing, but North Korea's nuclear program has been a long, unreserved agenda for years and years. But more probably important, a fundamentally important factor that changed the position of North Korea in the global affair is, again, their support for Russia ever since the war in Ukraine erupted. Again, that they explicitly, they didn't hide any intention and they explicitly have supported again Russia again even in the United Nations, and they sent the troops and they sent the bombshells, and thanks to the sacrifice of their people, again, the North Korea's leadership, they gained this position. Again, as the Professor Millard described, again, the Chairman Kim was just next to the presidency. Again, China and Russia are the two of the largest countries in the world. North is not in that level, but they really changed their position. We have to be very, very, really concerned about this changed dynamics. So I think they are now much more confident than before. So that is why I think they are trying to send a higher officer, and they will certainly, I think, send some messages to the international society, which reflects the change the position or their change the mindset, which is again stronger confidence, I will say.
So we're going to see North Korea, the U.S., and South Korea all represented by high-level officials in New York. So, Professor Millard, what kind of potential shifts do you foresee for the diplomacy on the Korean Peninsula?
Well, I think for sure there's going to be some changes to diplomacy because we've mentioned the huge change in position of North Korea, and we've really created, and we're creating, two separate blocks now. There's a very strong North Korea, Russia, China bloc emerging, and that's also therefore creating a US, South Korea, Japan bloc, which means for South Korea, there's going to be a lot of changes in diplomacy. One will be China. In terms of communicating with North Korea, China, for the past several decades, has often acted as a sort of a mediator, sort of a middleman, facilitating dialogue with North Korea. If China moves more towards that bloc with Russia and North Korea, potentially we could see those communication channels being reduced, which is not a great thing. But we can also see, in terms of the denuclearization question, South Korea is going to have to change its position. As Professor In mentioned, North Korea is now in a much stronger position. North Korea no longer really needs to negotiate denuclearization. I mean, let's face it, it never was anyway, but right now it just doesn't need to. So South Korea may also need to change its position, maybe focus a little bit more on arms limitation, something like that. But it's really going to be a big test for South Korea to try to maintain security relations with the US and Japan, trade relations with China, and also try to maintain some relations with Russia and North Korea as well.
Right. So having all these sides in the same place could create, both risks and opportunities for diplomacy. We'll have to see how it goes moving forward. Now, as for now, we'll have to conclude our discussion here at this point. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights tonight, Professor Lim.
Thank you.
And Professor Millard, we appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.